Personally, I've come here to kind of get ideas from you guys, because I'm work for government in Jersey, and we're no different over here. We're seeing a lot of bad behaviours out on site, and we're thinking of a much more generalised sort of campaign about respect and respect for where you're at, and also who you're sharing with. So it's great to, I've been jotting down ideas like mad, and I know this is much more based on litter, but it's really been helpful for me, because we're always a bit behind over here as to what you guys have done. So I'm just trying to learn some stuff from you, really.
One thing we did last year, Julia, at Keep Britain Tidy, was we did a really quick and dirty intervention because of what was happening in parks and green spaces around. It was an intervention that used this messenger effect that I mentioned, which is about how receptive we are to messages depending on who they come from. So it was a generalised campaign within park settings, but it was to address antisocial behaviour and littering essentially. But it used so real images of volunteers and park users, and they were talking about the impacts of behaviour on them. So it was really emotive, and it stood out in terms of messaging because it was very photographic. So it had a big, I can send around images, but basically used a big image of the individual and then a quote from them. And what we did was we hyper localized the message to the specific park within which we were using the intervention. So it literally mentioned the specific park name. So it felt, very much like this was a message that was targeted at me as I use this park space. And we didn't do as robust monitoring as we would normally like to do, because it was all done at sort of breakneck speed in the summer period last year. But we had really positive indications on waste levels in the spaces we used it, with some parks reporting up to 50% reduction in littering. And also we always try and do this with our pilots, is we did perceptions monitoring. So we talked to people about whether they saw the campaign, how it made them feel, what they thought it was for, and it was really positively received generally by people that saw it. So it was called Love Parks. You can have a look, or I can send details via the network. But yes, that might be something you could look to use.
Yeah, thanks, Lizzie. I saw some of that. I think I might have, because I've been doing a little bit of research to see what's been going on, and I did see some of that. It looked that's really useful information. Thank you.
It sounds a similar approach to the one they take on some roads, particularly motorways, with that emotive approach. So it's quite interesting. My colleague Claire and I here representing the landowners, who obviously have seen a huge increase in visitors across their ground and farmland, etc., and national parks, which I think often people don't realise are made up of private landowners. So it's been trying to do a big push on education. We're trying to get the countryside code into the curriculum, but banging our heads against a brick wall on that. But we shall persevere.
It's interesting, that curriculum stuff and the education, because I kind of just keep feeling this is at such a basic level that we're trying to just tell people what they should know. They should know as a child at primary school, this stuff, isn't it? It's about don't drop your litter. Everybody knows that it's wrong, surely. It's frustrating you have to keep getting that message across, though.
I think that's the problem. Not everyone does know, do they? Some people are brought up, they don't know any better, and it's someone else's issue and someone else's problem. And when they next walk in the country park or that street, the litter's gone and they've seen that someone's tidied it up. So the next time they're there, they drop it again. And it's just, how do you change the outlook of some people? I work for Forestry England, and I manage community woodlands within Greater Manchester in Salford. And yeah, the litter is just unbelievable. And you see parents dropping it, kids dropping it, everyone dropping it, and you daren't say anything to them because the issues and stuff. But I don't know. Education is a big thing. It's got to be into schools, and I think years ago the councils went into schools and did some Great British Clean posters, what kids had done in primary schools, and I think that's where it's got to start with the younger generation. And it is, the younger generation are seeing it. They're the people to change it, aren't they?
I think children are quite a powerful influence.
Massive.
Anyone that's got children will know.
Yeah.
They go on and on once they've got a bee in their bonnet, and it could really make a difference. So it seems to have an effect with some of the sort of work with the oceans.
Yeah.
So you know, got to hope. But yeah, which say we're not giving up on the curriculum, but it would be great if other organisations were pushing as well, because
yeah, definitely. You've got to make it more fun to recycle and put stuff in bins. Like someone suggested at our place, a talking bin, that when you put something in, it rewards you. And I know it's years off, but like you go abroad, and like I went to Croatia, and it was all about recycling, and you can take it to the local shops and get tokens back and money back to spend in that shop. And I think we've got to go the same way to get people more incentive to deal with the litter. I don't know, it's just education, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm involved with one of the groups that's called Clean Devon, so we mainly focus on fly tipping, but obviously litter's become a big thing for us, and we've been looking at how we can try and get some of the metrics to make them make sense to an audience. So picking up the litter from a particular honey pot and saying this would fill a football pitch, a swimming pool. Obviously COVID's kind of interfered with that, and we've always had the age-old debate about whether you go for the hard-hitting, this is what your litter's done to wildlife, to livestock, to the countryside, or whether you go with a bit more of a gentle nudge. And some of the research done in Dartmoor suggested that a gentle nudge was actually better than the really graphic. Yeah. I mean, we were looking at it in terms of livestock worrying and that sort of element, and they said they were showing them to responsible people, and their shutters just came down. They weren't willing to interact. So I think there's quite a fine line to be trodden there. And it's quite interesting to see the Scout and Guide badges, because that was something we've talked about, the practicalities of whether we could get some of the groups on board with a badge, whether they're cadets or guides.
I have to apologise. I think you guys have been left without a chair for some reason. We've just been flying around. I'm not sure what's happened with the structure, but so apologies for that. I think you've been able to get on with discussion, which is great. Maybe for the sort of last 2-3 minutes, if we maybe just focus discussion around what actions we should try to get behind, and perhaps, you know, can we have an agreed action from this breakout room that we could take back to the plenary session?
Yeah. One thing I wanna look at is a big partnership, companies sponsoring bins. Is going to the big companies like Tesco and saying, will you sponsor a bin on one of our sites and we'll pay for the installation and the price of the bins, but will they pay for, because the cost is getting the local authorities to empty them. And I think if we can get big corporate companies willing to spend a bit of money on sponsoring bins on sites, I think that would be a massive help to Forestry England. But I just don't know if there's been anything like that done in the past, or anyone knows of any, similar.
Is there any legs in the putting the number plate on the receipts of drive-through?
So when on some of our country parks where we had a problem, one of our rangers years ago went to all the local shops and said, when anyone buys it, put the receipt in the bag, so that when you find the rubbish, you find the receipt, you can go back to that shop, and if it's really bad and it's continual, you can get their CCTV footage and find out who the culprits are. But that's where we've got quite bad impacts with antisocial behaviour. So it's a little bit more than litter. It's more the drinking, drugs and everything else. But by putting that receipt in the bag, you can link it back to them a little bit.
So how would we sum up that action? What would be sort of a good summary of what you're describing there, Carly?
I don't necessarily think that's a good action. I don't think it's an action to take forward because it's still not, it's not tackling the behaviours. I would rather see something about bigger companies being more responsible for their litter, because at the end of the day they're producing it.
I just put an action that I think local authority recycling centres should reduce the cost for local people taking the rubbish to the recycling plants, because what we're finding is they're getting charged to do that, and so certain people aren't taking it to the recycling or local tip and just fly tipping it. But I think if there was a bit of relaxation from local authorities on taking more waste, I think it'd reduce fly tip, and certainly in my area it would. It just, local authorities, they've got to, once it's fly tipped, they've got to, they're sucking up the costs anyway, because they've got to send a team out to tidy it up and clear it, so it's costing them in the long run anyway.
See, we're not actually allowed to take our fly tipping to our local tip sites, even though we're this county council.
Right. Where do you?
We have to pay private companies to take it away, because the tip sites won't take it. So we can't take it. As a local authority, we pick up litter. We still have to pay a private company to dispose of it.